a bustling community event, a fiery confrontation unfolds as a woman calls security on a man in a MAGA hat, unaware that he's the CEO sponsoring the entire event. What happens next will shock everyone and leave you questioning your assumptions. Don't miss this powerful story. Comments below. Where are you watching from? And if you like and love our story, kindly subscribe our channel, Life Inspirational and Motivational Tales that explore themes of love, unity, and patriotism. Stay with us always for interesting stories. Let's start the story. It was a sunny afternoon at the city's annual cultural fair, an event meant to celebrate community and diversity. People from all walks of life mingled among food stalls, musical performances, and activist booths. The air buzzed with lively conversations, some friendly, others more pointed. In this melting pot of ideas and passions, there was bound to be a clash of perspectives. At the heart of the event was Ethan, a mid-40s Republican businessman who had come to support his company's sponsorship of the fair. Despite his wealth and success, Ethan preferred to stay under the radar, blending in with the crowd. But today, blending in was impossible. Perched atop his head was a bright red MAGA hat with the bold text, "Make America Great Again." Ethan wore the hat not as a provocation, but as a personal symbol of his beliefs. Hope for a stronger nation and a commitment to the values he held dear. He was well aware of how polarizing the hat could be, but he believed in standing by his principles, even when it wasn't easy. As he wandered through the event, Ethan stopped by his company's booth, chatting with his employees and checking on the display. To him, this was just another opportunity to connect with the community and show support for a local event. But little did he know, his simple decision to wear the hat would soon spark a chain of events he could never have anticipated. A few booths away, Karen stood handing out flyers for a social justice organization she passionately supported. A woman in her late 30s with a sharp gaze and a fiery personality, Karen was known for her outspoken advocacy and her zero-tolerance approach to anything she deemed offensive. When her eyes landed on Ethan and his MAGA hat, her calm demeanor shifted instantly to one of indignation. To Karen, the hat wasn't just an accessory. It was a symbol of division, hate, and everything she opposed. She watched as Ethan engaged in polite conversation with people at the booth, her irritation growing with each passing second. Finally, unable to contain herself any longer, she marched across the lawn toward him. "Excuse me," Karen said loudly, her voice cutting through the cheerful chatter of the fair. Several heads turned to see what was happening. Ethan glanced up from the pamphlet he had been reading, his calm expression meeting Karen's fiery one. "Yes?" he asked politely, though he could already sense where this was going. Karen gestured angrily at his hat. "Do you really think it's appropriate to wear that here? At an event meant to celebrate inclusion and diversity? That hat represents everything this event stands against." Ethan raised an eyebrow, surprised by the intensity of her approach. "I'm sorry if the hat offends you," he replied evenly, "but it's just a representation of my beliefs, not a statement against anyone else." Karen's frustration only grew. "That's easy for you to say. You don't know what it's like to be marginalized because of what that hat stands for. Wearing it here is disrespectful to everyone who's worked hard to make this event inclusive." Ethan sighed, realizing that anything he said would likely be met with more hostility. I respect your perspective," he said calmly, "but this hat means something different to me. I'm here to support my company and this community, just like everyone else." Their exchange had drawn a small crowd, people pausing mid-conversation to watch the confrontation unfold. Karen, emboldened by the attention, decided to escalate the situation. She pulled out her phone and dialed the event's security line. "I need you to send someone over immediately," she said, her voice sharp and commanding. "There's a man here causing a disturbance and wearing offensive political attire." Ethan's calm demeanor remained unchanged, though inwardly he felt a pang of frustration. He had come to enjoy the day and support his employees, not to become the center of a public spectacle. But he knew better than to let his emotions get the best of him. Within minutes, 2 security guards arrived, their faces neutral as they assessed the situation. Karen wasted no time explaining her version of events, pointing an accusing finger at Ethan and his hat. "This man is creating a hostile environment," she said emphatically. "That hat is offensive and inappropriate for an event like this." The lead security guard turned to Ethan, his expression professional but firm. "Sir, we've received complaints about your attire. We'd like to ask you to remove the hat or leave the event." Ethan looked at the guards, then at Karen, who stood with her arms crossed, clearly expecting him to comply. Instead, he took a deep breath and addressed the guards calmly. "Gentlemen," he said, "I'm here as a representative of one of the event's primary sponsors. I'm not causing a disturbance, I'm simply wearing a hat that reflects my beliefs. I understand that it's a polarizing symbol, but I have the same right to be here as anyone else." The security guards exchanged uncertain glances, caught between the need to maintain order and the realization that the situation was far more complex than it appeared. Just as one of them was about to respond, a voice from the crowd cut through the tension. "Wait a minute," said a young woman who had been watching from the sidelines. "Do you even know who he is?" Karen turned to the woman, her expression confused. "What are you talking about?" The woman stepped forward, her gaze shifting between Ethan and Karen. "That's Ethan Grant," she said. "He's the CEO of the company sponsoring this event." A ripple of shock spread through the crowd. Karen's face went pale as she processed the information. The man she had just berated and called security on wasn't just another attendee. He was one of the event's key supporters and a prominent figure in the community. Ethan, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, remained composed. "I didn't think it was necessary to mention my role here," he said, addressing Karen directly. "I came to enjoy the event and support the people who put it together, but perhaps this is a good moment to remind everyone why we're here. To celebrate diversity, which includes diversity of thought." Karen's indignation gave way to embarrassment. She opened her mouth to respond, but found herself at a loss for words. The crowd watched in silence, the tension slowly giving way to a sense of reflection. Ethan turned to the security guards. "I appreciate you're doing your job, but I think we can all agree this was a misunderstanding. I have no intention of disrupting the event, and I'd like to continue enjoying it peacefully." The guards nodded, relieved to have a resolution that didn't involve further confrontation. Karen, meanwhile, struggled to reconcile her initial assumptions with the reality of the situation. Finally, she stepped forward, her voice quieter now. "Mr. Grant," she began, her tone hesitant. I'm sorry, I didn't realize who you were. I shouldn't have reacted the way I did." Ethan met her gaze, his expression thoughtful. "Apology accepted," he said simply. "But this isn't about who I am. It's about learning to approach each other with understanding, even when we disagree." Karen nodded, her face a mix of regret and newfound perspective. As the crowd began to disperse, the tension in the air eased, replaced by a sense of quiet introspection. People returned to their conversations and activities, though the encounter lingered in their minds. Later that day, Karen sought Ethan out near his company's booth. She approached him cautiously, unsure if he would be willing to talk. "Mr. Grant," she said softly, I just wanted to thank you for how you handled everything earlier. You could have escalated the situation, but you didn't. You showed more patience than I did, and I appreciate that." Ethan smiled faintly. We all have moments when our emotions get the better of us," he said. "What matters is how we move forward." Karen hesitated before speaking again. "You've given me a lot to think about. I still don't agree with everything that hat represents, but I realize now that I was wrong to judge you without knowing your story." Ethan nodded. "And I appreciate you being willing to reflect on that. If more people were open to having conversations instead of confrontations, we might find we're not as divided as we think." As Karen walked away, she felt a sense of clarity she hadn't experienced in a long time. The encounter with Ethan had challenged her assumptions and reminded her of the importance of looking beyond the surface. For Ethan, the day had been a reminder of why he believed in the principles symbolized by the hat, not because they were perfect, but because they represented the freedom to engage, debate, and grow. It wasn't about winning arguments. It was about building bridges. In the end, both Ethan and Karen walked away from the event with a deeper understanding of each other and a renewed commitment to fostering dialogue over division. And for those who had witnessed the encounter, it served as a powerful example of how even the most heated conflicts can lead to meaningful connections when approached with patience and humility. Have you ever experienced a moment where assumptions led to unexpected surprises? Share your story in the comments below. Your experiences can inspire others to see the bigger picture. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that challenge perspectives and spark meaningful conversations.